Captain John sat alone in the quiet cabin of his small ship. The stars outside the window looked cold and endless, but his mind was not on the stars. His eyes were fixed on the strange message glowing on the screen in front of him. It was not human writing. The letters were like silver fire, twisting and moving as if alive. Yet the ship's translator had given him the meaning in plain words. You are invited. The Queen welcomes you as her honored guest. Come to the great feast. John read the line again and again. He had traveled to many alien worlds before, but never had he received something like this. A direct call from a queen of a great empire, something powerful, something dangerous. At first he thought it must be a mistake. Why would a mighty alien ruler invite a lone human? He was not an ambassador, not a famous hero, only a traitor and, sometimes a soldier. But the message repeated again as if it knew his doubts. The Queen awaits. John's heart beat faster. He could refuse. He could turn his ship around and vanish into the dark sea of stars. But curiosity pulled him stronger than fear. What if this was a chance? A chance to meet powers beyond imagination. A chance to bring honor to humanity. He pressed his hand against the screen. Set course, he whispered. The ship obeyed, sliding into faster-than-light travel. Hours later, the ship slowed. A world appeared before him. It was not like Earth, not like any planet he had seen before. The surface glowed in rivers of blue fire, and towers stretched so high they broke through the clouds. Around the planet floated rings of ships, massive alien vessels, silent and watchful. As John's small craft approached, he felt the weight of their eyes. He was a single man, and yet an entire empire was watching him. A deep voice filled his cabin, smooth and calm. Human, you are welcome. Follow the path. Do not turn away. John swallowed hard. His hands shook slightly on the controls, but he forced a steady breath. He followed the glowing markers that guided him through the fleet. None of the alien ships fired, but the silence was more frightening than any weapon. Soon, he was brought to a landing platform larger than his hometown. The surface was black stone, shining like glass. Strange symbols were carved into the floor, burning faintly with light. As his ship touched down, the bay doors opened. He saw them. Tall figures stood waiting, their bodies wrapped in long robes of silver. Their faces were hidden behind masks shaped like insects with many eyes that glowed faint green. Not a sound came from them. They only stood watching him. John rose from his chair slowly. His chest felt heavy, his breath caught between fear and awe. He put on his jacket, checked his sidearm, then stopped. Bringing a weapon to a Queen's Hall might be the fastest way to die. He left it behind. The ship's ramp lowered with a hiss of steam. John stepped out. His boots touched the black stone. At once the masked figures bowed in perfect unison. Their robes brushed the floor. Then they rose and spoke together in one voice, a voice that echoed like wind in a canyon. The Queen awaits. John nodded, though his throat was dry. He followed them. The hall beyond was unlike anything he had ever seen. Crystal pillars rose into the shadows, glowing with colors that shifted and danced like living light. The air smelled strange, sweet, and sharp at the same time, like burning flowers. His footsteps echoed across the floor, but the aliens moved without a sound. Everywhere he looked, eyes watched him. Some eyes were round, others slitted, some glowing like embers, some cold as glass. Alien nobles stood along the walls, their forms hidden in layers of silk and metal. Their whispers filled the air, a language John could not understand, but he felt the weight of it. They were speaking about him. He kept walking. He tried to stand tall, to keep his face calm, but inside his mind raced. Why so much attention for one man? Why was he the guest? Finally, the long hall opened into a chamber so vast it felt like a dream. At the far end, on a throne carved from black crystal, sat the Queen. She was taller than any human. Her skin shimmered silver blue, her hair flowing like liquid metal. A crown of living fire burned above her head, and her eyes were the deepest black John had ever seen, endless, pulling him in. When she looked at him, the hall grew silent. Every alien bowed low, their foreheads touching the ground. The queen raised her hand. "Welcome, human," she said, her voice soft yet heavy with power. "You honor us by coming. Tonight, you are our most precious guest." John's chest swelled with pride, but also with unease. Something in her tone made the hairs on his neck rise. The words were kind, but the way she looked at him, it was not the way a ruler looks at a guest. It was the way a predator looks at a meal. And yet, he could not turn back. The great feast was about to begin. The masked guards guided Captain John through another set of massive doors. They opened slowly, as if the stone itself resisted, groaning like an ancient creature waking from sleep. Beyond the threshold stretched a hall so vast that John almost stopped walking. It was not a place built for humans. The ceiling soared into shadows so high he could not see its end. Giant crystal columns lined the path, glowing in shifting shades, of blue and violet as though alive. Between the pillars hung banners made of threads of light, symbols moving across them like fireflies trapped in glass. John walked forward, his footsteps small and hollow in the great space. The floor beneath him was polished black stone smooth as water, reflecting the light of the crystals above. The reflection stretched his figure into something thin, ghost-like. He wondered if the alien saw him as a shadow, or a man. On either side of the hall the nobles stood. Dozens, perhaps hundreds of them. Their faces were hidden, their shapes wrapped in robes of metal and silk. Some had many arms folded neatly. Others had long necks bent low in stillness. None spoke loudly, but the whispers never stopped. John felt every word was about him, though he could not understand their tongue. He kept his chin high, forcing himself to appear calm. They cannot smell fear, he thought, though he was not sure if that was true. At the far end of the hall, a table stretched longer than a city street. It was carved from a single slab of stone that pulsed faintly with light, as though it were alive. Upon it sat strange foods, bowls of glowing fruit, platters of meat that seemed to shift shape, pitchers of liquid that sparkled like stars. The scents were heavy and sweet, clinging to his nose, almost dizzying. At the head of the table sat the queen. Her throne was taller than the others by many spans, carved from crystal so black it seemed to swallow the light around it. She did not move as John approached. Her silver blue skin glimmered faintly under the lights, and her black eyes never blinked. When John's steps finally stopped before her, the hall grew quiet. The queen lifted one hand. The whispers ended at once. "Our guest has arrived," she said, her voice rolling through the chamber like music, soft but heavy. "Tonight, we honor him." The nobles bent low again, as though the floor pulled them down. John stood tall, though inside his stomach tightened. The queen's smile was gentle but not warm. The guards led John to a chair near the middle of the endless table. It was not a seat of power, but it was not low either. Strange vessels were placed in front of him, cups of crystal, plates of silver, forks with too many prongs, but no food was set upon his plate. John looked left and right. The nobles had already begun to eat. They lifted shimmering fruit that dripped light like honey. They tore at roasted creatures with claws and mandibles, juices steaming with alien spices. Some slurped glowing liquid from shells that sang when tilted. The sounds of the feast filled the hall, cracking shells, dripping juices, laughter like chimes. But still, John's plate was empty. He frowned. Had they forgotten him? A noble leaned close, its mask shining with faint green light. In a voice like wind through a cavern it whispered, "The gift is ready." John blinked. "What gift?" he asked, but the noble only bowed its head and returned to its food. He turned to another figure on his right. The alien had 6 eyes, all staring at him while it sipped glowing drink. Its lips curled in a way that might have been a smile. "The queen is pleased," it said softly. "The queen will feed well tonight." John's chest tightened. His hand gripped the table, but he forced his face to remain calm. He was a guest, he reminded himself, This was just strange alien custom, words lost in translation. It had to be. And yet the way the alien's 6 eyes lingered on him made his skin crawl. At the far end, the queen raised her hand again. The feasting slowed, then stopped. All eyes turned to her. She stood slowly, her robes falling like waves of liquid silver. "Human," she said, her voice echoing softly. "You have traveled far to join us. You sit among us not as stranger but as gift." The hall erupted with a sound. Not applause, but something stranger. A rhythm, deep and hollow, like drums made from bones. The nobles began to chant, low and united, the words repeating, "Gift, gift, gift." John's throat went dry. He tried to swallow, but it felt like stone in his chest. The queen stepped down from her throne. She walked slowly toward him, her black eyes fixed on his face. Each step was silent, but John felt it like a weight pressing into the ground. She stopped only a breath away. He could see the strange shimmer in her skin, smell the sharp scent of her breath, sweet, but sharp as blood. Her smile grew wider. "Tonight," she whispered so softly only he could hear, "you will give us what we desire most." John froze. The hall around him blurred with shadows and whispers. His heart pounded in his ears louder than the drums. He realized now. He was not a guest. He was the feast. The queen's words hung in the air like smoke. John sat frozen, his hands pressed to the cold stone table. Around him, the nobles began to stir again, their masked faces turning toward him with renewed hunger in their eyes. The feast had truly begun, yet not for him. Servants glided forward, their movements smooth and soundless. They carried trays of food so strange that John could hardly look at it without shuddering. One servant placed before a noble a plate of glowing worms that wriggled until the creature's sharp teeth crushed them. Another servant poured molten silver liquid into a tall cup, which hissed and smoked before being swallowed whole by a creature with 4 mouths. John's own plate remained bare. He shifted uncomfortably in his chair. The chair itself felt strange, warm, almost alive, like it breathed faintly beneath him. He wanted to stand, but the stares of the aliens pinned him down harder than chains. The queen raised her goblet high. The liquid inside shimmered like liquid. Night, black but full of shifting stars. "To the gift," she declared. The hall answered in unison, voices rising together. "To the gift." The nobles drank, their throats glowing faintly as the strange liquid slid into their bodies. The sound of it made John's skin crawl. The queen lowered her goblet and turned her eyes back to John. "Does the human not drink?" she asked softly, almost teasing. At once, a servant stepped forward, setting a cup before him. The drink inside looked like thick smoke trapped in glass, curling and twisting as if alive. John stared at it. His instinct screamed at him not to touch it, but the eyes of the hall were heavy, pressing, waiting. He lifted the cup slowly. It was warm in his hand, warmer than any drink should be. He raised it to his lips, letting only the faintest sip touch his tongue. The taste was sharp, bitter, almost metallic. His stomach twisted immediately. He forced himself not to cough. The queen's black eyes glittered. "Good," she said. "You honor us." The hall hummed with approval, and the feasting grew louder. But as John sat, he began to notice the whispers more clearly. They seemed to come from everywhere, behind him, beside him, even from the floor. His translator implant caught pieces of the alien language and turned them into words he could understand. "The flesh will be sweet. The queen will feast tonight. The gift must not escape." John's hands trembled beneath the table. He clenched his fists to steady them. His eyes darted toward the doors at the far end of the hall. Guards stood there unmoving, their insect masks glinting faintly in the light. He would not reach them alive. He forced himself to breathe slowly. He was not dead yet. He still had time. The queen rose again. This time she extended her hand toward him. "Come," she said. "Join me." 2 guards stepped forward, their long fingers brushing his arms. Gently, yet firmly, they lifted him from the chair. John stood, his legs heavy. his heart hammering. He followed the queen down the length of the hall, every noble watching him in silence now. At the center of the chamber, a platform of golden stone rose from the floor. Strange markings glowed upon it, spirals and runes that seemed to move as he looked at them. The queen gestured and the guards led him onto the platform. The air there was different, thicker, charged, as if full of unseen lightning. His skin prickled. "Here," the queen said softly, "the feast begins." The nobles cheered, their voices merging into a roar that shook the hall. The sound was like thunder rolling across mountains. John stood frozen, his eyes wide. "Feast?" he whispered, his voice barely audible. The queen's smile widened, showing teeth far too sharp for comfort. "You are the feast, human. You are the gift we have awaited. Your presence will honor us. Your body will strengthen us." The truth struck him like a blade to the chest. He stumbled back, but the guard's hands held him firm. His mind screamed, but his voice would not come. He looked around desperately. No human allies. No way out. Only eyes, hundreds of eyes, watching, waiting. The queen raised her hands high. At once the lights in the hall dimmed, leaving only the glow of the markings beneath his feet. The runes pulsed brighter, as if feeding on his fear. Drums began to beat slow and heavy. Boom, boom, boom. The nobles chanted again, louder this time, their voices crashing together. Gift, gift, gift. John's knees weakened, but he forced himself to stand straight. He would not give them the pleasure of seeing him broken. The queen stepped closer, her shadow falling over him. Her voice lowered to a whisper that only he could hear. "Do not fear. Your sacrifice is not death, it is honor. You will live forever in us." Her hand reached for his chest. John's heart pounded wildly, every instinct screaming for escape. He knew in that single terrible moment that if he did not act soon, there would be no escape at all. The feast had begun, and he was the main course. The queen's cold hand hovered inches from John's chest, her black eyes glimmering with hunger. He felt the heat of her touch before it even reached him. Around them, the nobles chanted louder, their masked faces turned upward, their voices rolling like thunder through the hall. Gift, gift, gift. John's heart hammered against his ribs as if it wanted to leap out before she could take it. His mouth went dry, but his mind burned with clarity. At last, the whispers, the stares, the empty plate. It all made sense. He was not here to share a meal. He was the meal. A sudden wave of panic rose in him, but John forced it down. If he let fear control him, he was finished. His body screamed at him to run, to fight, but he saw the guards at the edges of the hall, tall, masked, armed. Escape would not be easy. The queen's fingers brushed his chest lightly. The touch was soft, almost tender, yet it carried the weight of a predator tasting its prey. "You are perfect," she whispered. "Your kind is rare, strong, precious. Tonight you join us in the highest way." Her words chilled him. Precious. Like cattle were precious before slaughter. John's jaw clenched. He stepped back sharply, breaking the touch. The guards hissed through their masks and tightened their grip, but he twisted, wrenching one arm free. For a heartbeat, the nobles gasped, their chant breaking. The queen tilted her head, her smile, faint but sharp. "Do not resist," she said calmly. "The gift must remain pure." John's eyes darted around the glowing platform. The runes pulsed brighter with his movement, as though feeding on his fear and defiance. He noticed something. Every pulse matched the beat of the drums and the beat of his heart. The ritual was alive, connected to him. If he stayed here, he would not last long. He forced his voice steady. "Why me?" he demanded, loud enough to echo across the hall. "Why a human?" The queen regarded him as though he had asked a child's question. "Because you are different. Because you carry fire in your blood. Because the universe itself whispers your kind's strength. Do not fear. You will be remembered." Her words twisted inside him, half flattering, half terrifying. Was this what had happened to other humans? Were there others who had accepted such invitations never to return? The nobles began to chant again, faster this time. The drums matched their rhythm. Boom, boom, boom. The golden platform glowed brighter, surrounding John in a cage of light. His skin tingled, his legs heavy as if the floor itself tried to root him in place. He clenched his fists. No, I will not die here like an offering. When the nearest guard reached for him again, John struck. His fist connected with the alien's mask, shattering one of its glowing eyes. The guard stumbled back, hissing in pain. The hall erupted into chaos, gasps, cries, some nobles shrieking in anger, others in delight at the spectacle. The queen did not move. She only watched, her black eyes shining brighter, her smile never fading. "Let him fight," she said, her voice carrying easily over the noise. "Let the gift show his worth." The guards circled him now, cautious. John's chest heaved, but his mind sharpened. If they wanted a fight, he would give them one. Better to fall fighting than to sit and wait to be consumed. He remembered the small blade strapped to his boot. Not a gun, not much, but sharp enough. Slowly, subtly, he bent down as though catching his breath. His fingers slipped the blade free. The guards closed in. The drums pounded faster. The chanting grew feverish. John lunged. His blade slashed across another guard's arm. The alien screeched, its robe tearing, black blood spraying across the glowing runes. The runes pulsed brighter, at the blood's touch flaring like fire. The hall gasped as one. The queen's smile widened. "Yes," she whispered, her voice carrying like wind. "The gift awakens." John's heart sank. They were not afraid. They were excited. His resistance was not ruining their ritual, it was completing it. He backed away, his blade shaking. In his grip. The runes glowed so brightly now that they burned into his eyes. His chest ached with every beat of his heart. He understood too late. His fear, his struggle, his blood, all of it was fuel. The more he resisted, the stronger their ritual became. The nobles shouted louder, some pounding the table, others clawing at the air as if tasting his energy. The queen raised her hands high, her voice thundering through the chamber. "Behold, the gift accepts his fate." "No!" John roared, though his voice was drowned beneath the chant. He slashed at the glowing runes, desperate to break their hold. Sparks burst. The floor shuddered, but the glow only grew. The queen stepped closer, her shadow covering him again. Her eyes locked on his, endless and cold. "Too late, human," she said softly. "The feast has already begun." John's blade slipped from his shaking hand. His breath came ragged. For the first time, true despair seeped into his bones. He realized now, there might be no escape. The hall shook with the rhythm of drums, the chanting of the nobles rolling like waves. John stood on the golden platform, his body trembling as the glowing runes pulsed beneath his feet. His blade lay useless on the ground, its metal reflecting the fire of the ritual. Everywhere he looked, alien faces stared back, hungry, eager, shining with dark excitement. The queen's shadow loomed closer, her silver-blue form radiant in the dim light. Her smile was calm, almost tender, but her black eyes carried no warmth. They were endless, empty, yet full of hunger. "The gift resists," she said, her voice echoing. "This makes the feast pure." The nobles roared in approval. The sound hammered against John's skull, shaking his resolve. He felt trapped in a nightmare where every choice only drew him closer to doom. Then something changed. The runes beneath his feet shifted. They no longer pulsed with the rhythm of the drums. They pulsed with the rhythm of his heart. Faster, harder, louder. Each beat lit the symbols brighter until they burned like firebrands against the dark stone. John staggered back, his chest aching. The ritual was feeding on him, yes, but he also felt a strange strength blooming inside. His blood burned, his skin prickled with heat, his muscles tense with unnatural energy. The queen tilted her head, as if she too noticed. Her smile grew wider. "Yes," she whispered. "The gift awakens. You are almost ready. Almost ready. For what? John's mind raced. If they wanted him to break, maybe breaking was the last thing he should do. If his fear gave them power, then he had to fight not just with his blade, but with his will. He clenched his fists. No. I am not your meal. I am not your offering. The runes dimmed slightly. The queen's smile flickered only for a moment. Then her voice rose, louder, commanding, "Raise the feast. Bring forth the throne of hunger." At once the ground rumbled. From the far end of the hall, servants dragged something massive forward. It was a chair of bone, tall and sharp, carved from the remains of creatures John could not name. The throne was bound with chains, dripping with strange fluids that hissed when they struck the floor. The nobles cheered. Some struck the ground with their fists, others clawed at their own robes in excitement. John's stomach twisted. That was no throne of honor. That was a seat for sacrifice. The guards moved closer. Their insect masks gleamed, their long fingers reaching for him. John backed away, his body tense with fight. His hand shot down and snatched up the blade he had dropped. He raised it, his knuckles white. "I am not your feast," he shouted, his voice breaking through the roar of the hall. The queen laughed, soft and musical, a sound that made his skin crawl. "Oh, human, you were never a guest. You were always the gift." Her voice struck him harder than any weapon. For the first time, he truly understood. Every bow, every whisper, every empty plate. This was not kindness. It was theater, ceremony. A ritual where he was the center but never the honored one. He was the offering. The guards lunged. John slashed wildly, catching one across the mask. Sparks burst as the alien stumbled back. The hall erupted in cheers again, as though his defiance was part of the show. The throne of bone loomed closer now, dragged by servants whose hands left trails of fire on the floor. John's breath came ragged. His muscles burned. He could not fight them all. His only hope was to break free of the platform itself. With a roar, he drove his blade down into the glowing runes. Light burst upward, a shockwave rattling the hall. For a moment, everything froze. The chanting stopped. The drums fell silent. The runes dimmed. John's chest swelled with hope. He had done it. Then the queen stepped forward, her hand brushing the ruined symbols. At her touch, they flared alive again, brighter than before. Her black eyes locked onto his, and for the first time, John saw something behind the hunger. Amusement. "You cannot break the feast," she whispered, "because you are the feast." The nobles screamed their joy. The drums pounded faster, the throne of bone now blazing with unholy light. John's knees weakened. He staggered back, his blade trembling in his hand. His chest pounded painfully, his heart racing out of control. Every beat seemed to echo across the hall. The queen raised her hands high. Her voice thundered above the chaos. "Now, let the gift. Be seated." The guards closed in again. Chains rattled in the servants' hands. The throne of bone stood ready, its seat dripping with fresh light like blood. John's breath caught. He understood now that this was the end game. Once he sat upon that throne, there would be no escape. His mind screamed with a single truth. He had been chosen not to eat, but to be eaten. And the worst part, every noble here had waited their whole lives for this moment. The throne of bone stood tall, its jagged edges gleaming under the shifting light. The servants dragged it closer, their eyes glowing with feverish joy. The nobles pounded the tables, their chants shaking the very walls. "Gift, gift, gift." John's breath came fast and shallow. His body trembled with fear, but his mind sharpened with one desperate truth. If they put him in that chair, it was over. The queen raised her hands slowly, her black eyes fixed on him. "Be seated, human. Give yourself freely. Do not fight. Destiny. Destiny." The word cut through him like a blade. He thought of Earth, of humanity scattered across the stars, of how this empire might see them, rare, precious, hunted. He realized then, if he fell here, others could follow. This was not just about him. He would not give them that. The guards stepped closer, their insect masks glinting in the dim light. Their long arms reached for him, chains rattling in their hands. John tightened his grip on his blade. His chest heaved, but he forced his voice steady. "I said," he growled, "I am not your feast." Then he struck. His blade flashed, slashing across the nearest guard's arm. The creature screeched, stumbling back. Another guard lunged, but John ducked low, driving the blade upward into its chest. Dark blood sprayed across the glowing runes. The hall erupted, not in outrage, but in wild excitement. The nobles screamed with joy, their voices blending into a storm. Some clapped, some tore at their robes, others shrieked as if tasting his violence. The queen's smile never faltered. If anything, it grew. "Yes," she purred. "Show us your fire." John spun, desperate. The guards pressed closer, their numbers overwhelming. He slashed, kicked, dodged. But for every step back, the throne loomed larger. His heart pounded wildly. He realized something strange. Each beat of his heart made the runes flare brighter, feeding the ritual. His fear, his rage, his fight. All of it was energy for them. They weren't trying to stop him. They wanted this. The truth struck him hard. He was not fighting against their plan. He was part of their plan. The queen's voice rang across the chaos. "Do not flee, human. Every strike, every drop of blood, every heartbeat, all of it makes you more worthy." Her words chilled him deeper than any wound. But if they wanted him to fight, maybe he could turn it against them. He let out a sharp breath, forcing his panic down. His mind raced, calculating. The throne was their focus, the runes were their cage. If he could disrupt the ritual itself, not with fear, but with defiance, maybe he could break it. A guard lunged. John sidestepped, then drove his blade deep, into the floor. Sparks burst as steel met glowing rune. The light flared, then flickered. The hall gasped in shock. The queen's eyes narrowed. "Interesting," she whispered. John ripped his blade free, stabbing again, carving across. The symbols. Each strike sent cracks through the golden platform. The floor trembled beneath his feet. The nobles screamed, not in joy now, but in panic. Some shouted warnings, others scrambled back. The drums faltered, the chant broke apart. For the first time, John saw fear in their eyes. The queen rose to her full height, her silver-blue form blazing with unnatural light. Her voice thundered across the chamber. "Enough!" Her hand swept through the air. A wave of invisible force struck John, throwing him across the platform. He hit the stone hard, his blade skittering away. Pain shot through his body, white-hot. The queen stepped closer, her shadow swallowing him. "You cannot escape, human. You belong to us." John groaned, forcing himself up onto his knees. His chest heaved, blood dripping from his lip. His eyes locked onto hers. "Belong?" He spat. "I belong to no one." Summoning every ounce of strength, he surged forward, not with his blade, but with his bare hands. He grabbed one of the glowing chains meant to bind him. The metal seared his skin, burning deep, but he held on. The hall gasped. The runes flared, brighter, then cracked, sparks flying in all directions. The golden platform shook violently. The queen's calm expression finally faltered. Her eyes widened, her smile fading. "What are you doing?" she demanded. John gritted his teeth, the chain burning into his flesh. "If my blood fuels this, then let's see what happens when I burn it out." With a roar, he yanked the chain free from its anchor. Light exploded across the hall. The runes shattered, cracks spiderwebbing across the platform. The ground shook as though the world itself was breaking apart. Nobles screamed in terror now. Servants fled. The throne of bone toppled, crashing into the floor with a thunderous crack. The queen staggered back, her eyes blazing with fury. "No, you cannot—" But her words were lost in the roar of collapsing stone. John stood in the center of the storm, the broken chain still in his bleeding hands. His body shook, his vision blurred, but his voice rang clear. "I am not your gift." The hall descended into chaos. The feast had been broken, the ritual shattered. But John knew. This was not over. The queen was still standing, and she was angry. The grand hall shook as if the planet itself trembled. Cracks raced across the black crystal walls, and the glowing runes shattered into sparks that rained like burning snow. Nobles screamed in panic, their robes flashing silver as they rushed toward the doors. Some fell, trampled by their own kind. But the queen did not run. She stood tall at the center of the chaos, her silver-blue form glowing brighter than ever, her crown of fire burning like a star. Her black eyes locked onto John with fury and hunger. "You dare?" Her voice thundered. "You break the sacred feast?" John staggered on the broken platform, blood dripping from his burned hands, his chest heaving with every breath. He had no weapon now. The blade was gone, the chain lay in pieces. But his will was still his own. "I am not your gift," he rasped, his voice hoarse but steady. "I will never be your meal." The queen's lips curled back, revealing teeth. Too sharp, too many. Her smile was no longer calm, it was savage. "Then you will be taken by force." She raised her hand. Power surged through the hall, invisible but heavy, crushing the air. John dropped to one knee, his body straining against the weight. The stone beneath him cracked under the pressure. Every instinct screamed at him to give up, to collapse, to let her take him. But deep inside, a fire burned. Raw, human stubbornness. The will that had carried his kind through storms, through wars, through the dark unknown of space. He forced himself to stand. Step by step, he rose against the crushing weight, his body shaking, his teeth clenched. The queen's eyes narrowed. Impossible. John staggered forward, each step a battle. The hall quaked around him, the nobles fleeing in terror. The throne of bone shattered into pieces. "You think humans are weak?" he growled, his voice breaking through the storm of power. "You think we're just food, gifts for your table?" He spat blood, his eyes blazing. "But we don't bow. We don't break. And we don't belong to you," the queen hissed, her form shifting, her silver skin splitting to reveal something monstrous beneath. Claws, scales, wings of shadow. She towered, above him now, a creature of nightmare. No longer a queen, but a predator unmasked. The sight should have broken him. Instead, it filled him with grim clarity. If he was to die, he would not die as prey. The broken runes around him still glowed faintly, their light flickering like dying embers. John dropped to his knees and slammed both burned hands into the cracks. His blood smeared across the stone, sizzling against the glow. At once, the platform flared to life again, not with their power, but with his. The runes blazed red, wild, uncontrolled, feeding on his blood, his rage, his will. The queen shrieked, her monstrous voice shaking the hall. "No, the gift is mine!" The energy surged upward in a column of light, swallowing them both. The nobles screamed as the hall cracked apart, stone raining from the ceiling. John felt the fire burning through him, tearing at his flesh, searing his bones. But he held on, forcing every ounce of himself into the light. He thought of Earth, of the people who might come after him, of the humans who must never fall into this trap. "This ends," he whispered. "Here." With a final roar, he poured everything into the runes. The platform exploded. Light consumed the hall. Walls shattered, crystal pillars splintered, the roof caved in. The queen's scream echoed through the ruins, fading into nothing, as the energy tore her form apart. When the light faded, silence fell. The nobles were gone, scattered or crushed. The throne of bone lay in ruins. The hall was broken, smoking, empty. And in the center, John knelt on the cracked stone, his body burned, his breath shallow. He raised his head weakly, looking around the wreckage. He had done it. He had broken their ritual. The queen was gone. But, as he collapsed onto the stone, he heard a whisper. Soft, faint, like breath against his ear. "You cannot kill hunger, human. It waits. It always waits." His eyes widened. Was it his imagination? Or did the queen's spirit still linger, watching, waiting? Darkness closed in around him. Outside, his ship still waited on the black landing platform. The stars shone cold and endless, above. Whether John would live to see them again, or whether the Queen's feast had only just begun, remained unknown.